He arrived with a gentle smile, a camera in hand, and eyes as blue as the European sky. He introduced himself as a storyteller, a lover of Africa, a freelance journalist from Belgium, here to capture the beauty of the Black continent and share it with the world. The people welcomed him as a friend. He bought tea in the Tembisa market, took photos of sunsets over the Zogoma plains, and even bent down to tie the shoelaces of a crying child. He spoke the local language, knew President Ibrahim Traoré's name by heart, and didn't hesitate to praise him. "A torch in the darkness of this continent," he once said. But behind the lens, he was recording something else. Not the smiles of the villagers, not the festive dances, but the guard posts, the military routes, the training camps deep in the forest. He alone knew every road, even the ones not yet marked on official maps. There was only one chilling question. How did this journalist know the locations of military sites that were supposed to be kept secret? In the darkness of a small room, where sensitive data was transmitted bit by bit, a hand reached deep into the territory of Naruya. And President Ibrahim Traoré knew. This game was no longer about journalism. He stepped off the plane at Kabanga International Airport just after noon. Clean shoes, beige linen shirt, and a camera bag slung across his shoulder like a trusted companion. His name, according to the documents, was Julien Moreau, a freelance journalist from Brussels. On his chest, a press badge with an international emblem. In his pocket, a tourist visa that raised no alarms. At immigration, he spoke softly but fluently in French, complimenting the officer's uniform and praising the warmth of the country. "I've come to tell the story the world has ignored," he said. "The real Africa, the resilient one." He said he admired President Ibrahim Traoré, a rare kind of leader, Julien called him, unafraid to challenge global giants. Nobody suspected a thing. Within days, he was in the streets of Tembisa, sipping sweet tea with market vendors, helping an old woman lift her sack of yams, photographing school children laughing in the dust. He handed out pens with NGO logos and played the role perfectly. Humble, curious, polite. Local journalists even invited him to a press dinner, where he offered to collaborate on a documentary. But Julien's camera never stopped rolling, and it wasn't always pointed at what people expected. Instead of focusing on culture or daily life, he started filming water towers, radio antennas, and convoys moving at night. He had a drone, discreet and silent, that hovered for hours over government facilities. He kept notebooks written in cipher, and he never let anyone else near his laptop. The people of Naruja saw only what he wanted them to see, but far from the villages and markets, someone else had started to watch him. And soon questions began to surface inside the president's war room. At first it was subtle, just another name on a quiet list in a windowless room inside the Ministry of State Security. But when Agent Kamau, a sharp-eyed analyst stationed in Fort Darrow, noticed recurring GPS pings near classified military sites, something didn't sit right. The location matched areas Julien Moreau had visited. The Department of Foreign Observations had already filed a minor report weeks earlier. Nothing more than a note that a foreign journalist was taking an unusual interest in the Kavira exclusion zone, a region sealed off due to past insurgent activity. No foreign media had been granted access there in years, but Julien had footage from the perimeter and beyond. It wasn't until a blurry drone image surfaced showing a convoy from Naruha's 2nd Armored Division moving under cover of darkness, a route known to only high-ranking officials, that alarm bells rang. The photo appeared in Julien's private cloud storage, traced back through a false VPN registered in Malta. Now his name was no longer just on a list, it was underlined. A small team from the National Cyber Surveillance Unit began monitoring his communications. They didn't find calls to any known media outlets. Instead, encrypted messages were being sent regularly to anonymous nodes bouncing through Europe. Data packets, disguised as weather reports. Maps disguised as image metadata. His drone logs showed a disturbing pattern. Low-altitude flights over watchtowers, base layouts, and even the protected Goma communications hub, a nerve center for Naruja's military grid. He's not documenting, Kamau told his superiors. He's mapping. Meanwhile, Julian remained calm, unaware, or perhaps indifferent to the noose tightening around him. He visited rural schools, shook hands with district governors, and continued smiling at every checkpoint. He even granted an interview to a local radio host, passionately defending the sovereignty of African nations and praising President Ibrahim Traoré for inspiring a new generation of leadership. It was a performance worthy of an award. But for the security forces, the mask had cracked. President Traoré was briefed at midnight in his private quarters. The air in the room was heavy with silence as officials presented the evidence. Intercepted signals, surveillance footage, and a decrypted message that simply read, "Final phase begins in 48 hours. Traoré's jaw tightened. "We treat him like a journalist," he said slowly, "but we watch him like a ghost." Within hours, a covert operation was greenlit. Julian would not be arrested yet. That would be too easy and too obvious. Instead, they would build a net around him. Let him feel safe. Let him keep filming. Let him believe the disguise still held. Because when the truth came to light, they wanted more than just him. They wanted the hand that sent him. Julian had no idea the walls were closing in. He spent his morning at a youth center in Lukaya district, handing out notebooks, asking soft questions about life under President Traoré's government. A few boys posed for his camera, their faces lit with joy. Julian smiled back. Genuine or practiced, no one could tell. But two of the center's staff weren't who they appeared to be. One was an undercover officer from the Internal Defense Bureau, trained in facial recognition and counterintelligence. The other, a former linguist turned agent, whose job was to listen, not just to what Julian said, but how he said it. That evening, Julian returned to his guest house in Zogoma, a quiet two-story building run by an old widow who adored foreign visitors. He uploaded footage from the day onto an external hard drive. He encrypted it, like always, and labeled the folder something mundane: education reform interviews. But what lay inside were aerial scans of terrain, images taken by his drone that mapped the southern quarter of a military logistics route. It was the final piece the security forces needed. 2 blocks away, inside a parked delivery van, a small operations team watched everything unfold in real time. Thanks to a hidden tracker planted in his drone battery, they knew every time it activated and where. They didn't need to chase him anymore. He was walking straight into their hands. That night, Julian made a mistake. He logged into a secondary satellite uplink, not his usual encrypted VPN. The line was weaker, exposed. Within seconds, Naruja's cyber command intercepted the transmission. The data was raw and direct. Blueprints, location tags, movement schedules, and one chilling message in French: "Phase complete, extraction scheduled, package ready." President Ibrahim Traoré was alerted before sunrise. "Extraction?" he repeated, eyes narrowing. "From where?" No one answered, not yet, but everyone in the room understood. Julian was more than a spy. He was part of something larger, a silent operation already in motion. The question now was not just who he was working for, but what else they had planned. The trap would spring soon. But first, the president had one more move. Let him run, just far enough to lead them to the truth. It was just after midnight when the quiet knock came at room 206 of the Zogoma hillside guest house. Julian, still dressed, glanced at his laptop screen. The final transmission had just gone out. He opened the door casually, expecting perhaps the innkeeper with late tea. Instead, 5 men entered without a word. No raised voices, no drawn weapons, Only silence and precision. They moved like ghosts. In under a minute, they had secured the room, confiscated his laptop, camera gear, hard drives, and the satellite uplink box hidden behind a frame painting. Julian didn't resist. He didn't need to. His expression barely changed, like he'd expected this moment all along. At a secure facility deep beneath Fort Darrow, the interrogation began, but Julian said nothing, invoking international journalist protections. He demanded to speak to his embassy. He quoted articles, laws, and human rights charters, but President Ibrahim Traoré was no stranger to shadows in the law. He reviewed the materials himself, the aerial footage, the troop movement maps, and something far more disturbing, a list of Naruya's military reform allies, each marked with coded annotations and possible vulnerabilities. This wasn't journalism. It was reconnaissance, intelligence gathering of the highest level. Julian's true identity unraveled fast. Real name, Lucas Dervaux, trained in Brussels, fluent in 6 languages, linked to a discreet network of operatives across West Africa. His last assignment? Disrupt regional alliances by exposing weak points or destabilizing them. Now, one question remained. Who sent him? President Traoré gave the order. Keep him breathing, but let no one in the outside world know he's here. Not yet. We need the shadow behind the shadow inside a cold operations chamber beneath Fort Darrow. Analysts worked in shifts, tracing every digital fingerprint left behind by Lucas Dervaux, formerly Julian Moreau. It wasn't just encrypted files and drone logs anymore. It was phone calls routed through diplomatic satellite networks, receipts for untraceable SIM cards, and secure messages embedded in code sent via ordinary weather apps. Within 48 hours, the picture began to clear. Lucas was not alone. 3 more journalists currently operating in neighboring regions had used the same satellite uplink signature. 2 NGO vehicles in Kavira province had stopped exactly where Lucas had flown his drone a month earlier. And most troubling of all, a bank account registered under a fictitious media foundation in Luxembourg had funneled over $4 million to projects across West Africa. None of those projects existed. The funding source? A private security firm with known links to a European intelligence contractor, one previously expelled from Naruja for unauthorized reconnaissance 5 years earlier. President Traoré read the report in silence. His gaze shifted to the window behind him, where Naruja's flag fluttered in the warm wind. The sovereignty he had vowed to protect was under siege, not with bombs, but with cameras and covert wires. This isn't espionage, he finally said. It's sabotage in slow motion. He summoned his intelligence chief. I want names, flights, targets, every piece of this network dismantled, quietly. Then, pausing for a moment, he added, and when the world asks what happened to their journalist, tell them he left, but left with answers we never asked for weeks past. There was no press release, no photo of a man in handcuffs, no official word from Naruja or any embassy. Lucas Dervaux vanished like fog at sunrise. Foreign journalists whispered of a disappearance. NGOs demanded answers. A handful of European officials issued vague statements, but they stopped short of real accusations. After all, no government wanted to admit they had sent him. Inside Fort Darrow, Lucas remained silent. Not a confession, not a plea, only a stare that said, "You still don't know everything." But President Ibrahim Traoré knew enough. He knew that war no longer came in tanks and gunfire. It came hidden in stories, lenses, and smiles. And sometimes the deadliest weapons wore press badges. At a closed session of Naruja's National Assembly, Traoré spoke not of the arrest, but of sovereignty, of dignity, of the unseen hands that shape nations from afar. Our freedom, he said, is not stolen in a single night. It is worn down, one lie at a time, one whisper disguised as help. If we are not vigilant, we will wake up strangers in our own land. The room stood silent, not from fear, but understanding. Outside, the people of Naruja carried on, unaware of the man who came with a camera and left with the truth buried under layers of silence. And far away, in boardrooms and embassies, a lesson was noted, if not admitted. You cannot disguise conquest forever, not from a people who have opened their eyes. President Traoré appeared on national television, his presence commanding attention as he revealed the foreign powers' covert plans to intervene in the affairs of Naruja. His words, laced with both caution and urgency, served as a call to action for the citizens of the nation. In a tone both resolute and stern, he urged his people to remain vigilant in the face of threats that were not as obvious as the sounds of gunfire. The battlefield of today is no longer defined by the clash of weapons, he said. It is fought behind the lenses of cameras and through the data that is gathered and manipulated. The president's statement was more than just a warning. It was a revelation of the true nature of modern warfare, where the weapons of influence and control were no longer limited to physical conflict. In a world where information flows like water, it has become easier for external forces to infiltrate a country's sovereignty without ever setting foot on its soil. They no longer needed to send soldiers. They sent narratives distorting the truth, swaying public opinion, and undermining the unity of the nation. Traoré's words resonated deeply with the people, reminding them that the fight for their country's future was not one they could afford to ignore. The tools of manipulation, whether through media or technology, had the potential to sow division and confusion within their society. But the president also made it clear that the power to resist and protect their nation was in their hands, urging Naruja's citizens to stay informed, think critically, and guard against the subtle forms of warfare waged behind screens. In his speech, Traoré presented a new kind of warfare, one that relied not on armies, but on ideas. It was a battle of perception, where the lens of a camera or the click of a mouse could alter the course of history. He called upon every citizen to not only be aware of the external threats, but also to recognize the role they played in shaping the future of Naruja. It was a powerful reminder that, in this age of information, the true strength of a nation lies not just in its military might, but in the unity of its people and the clarity of their vision. The story of President Traoré's bold revelation on national television holds a profound lesson for all of us. It teaches us that the battles of today are no longer fought solely on the physical fields of conflict, but in the digital and ideological realms where information is both a weapon and a shield. The lesson is clear. In a world increasingly dominated by technology, media, and data, we must be vigilant about the narratives being shaped around us. The story emphasizes the importance of critical thinking and staying informed. As Traoré pointed out, the true threat to a nation's sovereignty lies in the manipulation of information. External forces may not need to physically invade a country. They can quietly influence public opinion, distort facts, and create division through subtle means. The modern battlefield is fought behind screens, through the power of media and the spread of misinformation. Moreover, the story shows the power of unity and awareness. It teaches us that every citizen plays a crucial role in safeguarding the integrity of their society. By staying alert to these external threats and critically analyzing the information we encounter, we can prevent ourselves from becoming pawns in a larger geopolitical game. Ultimately, the lesson is about empowerment. Traoré's call to action urges us to take responsibility for our understanding of the world, to challenge what we are told, and to ensure that we are not easily swayed by the forces seeking to manipulate the truth. In an era where knowledge is power, our ability to discern reality from fiction can determine the future of our communities, our nations, and our world.